We are continuing to track Hurricane Dorian. A short time ago, it made landfall in the Bahamas as a Category 5 hurricane with sustained winds of 185 miles per hour and gusts over 220 miles per hour. This is an extremely dangerous storm bringing life-threatening conditions. We have Joy Giberlew on the phone from Nassau, the capital of the Bahamas. She is the Director General for the Bahamas Ministry of Tourism. Thank you so much, Joy, for being with us. Tell us what conditions are like right now.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me. Well, in Nassau, which is really just experiencing the outer bands of the hurricane, we can see very choppy weather in terms of rainfall, as well as wind. But if we look at the islands that have been impacted, most specifically Abaco and approaching Grand Bahama, you're absolutely right in terms of the ferocity of the storm and the impact that it has had. So deteriorating conditions with sea surges, buildings already losing roofs, and a situation that is hard to describe.
Yes, we can see from some of this video on social media and from other sources the power and the fury of this storm. How prepared are the Bahamas for this Category 5 hurricane?
You know, the Bahamas has been very proud of the fact that it was deeply prepared for hurricanes. We obviously experience them a lot more than we would like to do. And with that being said, we have such a strong building code. But I don't think anyone expected a hurricane of this intensity. You're quite right when you said 185-mile winds, but when you add the gusts to that, over 220 miles, this is extreme. And really, we will only be able to assess what the real impact was once the storm has moved off and moved away, and we're able to get out and see the extent of damage to Abaco and Grand Bahama.
And where is it that people are seeking shelter? Do you have a sense? Obviously, you're in the midst of this storm right now, but where in the area is it that people are able to seek sanctuary when you consider those gusts that you mentioned, 220 mile per hour gusts?
Yes. You know, one thing about the Abacos in the Bahamas, they're surrounded by keys. They're stunningly beautiful. They're boater's paradise. And we were really insistent that people on the Keys, and for those who don't know, a key is a much smaller island. So you could be talking about 3 miles by half a mile, so that type of size. We really pleaded with people to evacuate. Most people heeded our advice, including tourists, but for the few who chose to remain, I think that this morning they were making calls and crying out for people to come and assist them to leave. But government has done a stellar job in getting people off the Keys, low-lying areas, close to the areas that are prone to flooding, and getting them into the hurricane shelters on higher ground. And I smile when I say higher ground in the Bahamas because obviously we're a very flat series of islands, but hurricane shelters that are built to sustain certainly a Category 5, and at this time we're praying Category 4, and we're praying a Category 5 strength hurricane.
And you mentioned the topography there, generally very flat terrain. When you talk about potential storm surge, for instance, of more than 20 feet, by the way, we're watching video that we want to mention. This is exactly what experts say you should not do, which is not venture out into the storm as that individual was. We want to just underscore that because that is unwise behavior, to put it mildly, potentially deadly behavior to go out in the middle of a storm like this. But I wondered, in terms of the storm surge, if you're talking more than 20 feet of storm surge, how will this area fare?
These questions are so real. It's questions that we're grappling with, even as I speak with you. And as I have said, until we get out and we are able to assess the extent of the damage and the toll that a sea surge of 20 feet potentially has had. And I just want to reiterate and thank you for making that comment that people should not go out to take videos because it is a dangerous time. And the most important thing is the preservation of human life. And so really great point. But this is uncharted territory, I think, for any of us in the Western Hemisphere. So it will be a time, this time tomorrow, that we would have a much, much better assessment of the damage and what the toll would be. I think from some of the videos that you would have seen, you can see that flooding has already started, streets are underwater, people's homes are already underwater. And so as much as possible, people where it's safe to get to top levels of their homes or wait for emergency services to come and get you if you are in a low-lying area.
So just to reiterate a time frame, you think it will be at least Monday afternoon before you're able to get out and safely assess all of the damage?
Yeah, and when we say Monday afternoon, that is only for the island of Abaco. We know that Hurricane Dorian is a very slow-moving hurricane, and so the fact that it is anticipated to be 24 hours in the Abacos and as long a time in Grand Bahama. So by this time tomorrow, we're hoping that Abaco, certainly we can get out and about to do that assessment. But Grand Bahama, we will obviously have to wait for Hurricane Dorian to pass away from Grand Bahama before the same can be done on that island. And that raises a great point, Elaine, if you'd allow me to say. One of the things that differentiates the Bahamas is that we are an archipelago. There are 700 islands. We actively promote 16 of those islands. So while our two most northern islands are impacted, it is worth saying that Nassau and our southern islands have not been impacted to that degree, and so they remain open and functioning, and we are in a position to lend aid to our northern islands.
All right, it's an important point. Joy Gibberlew, we're certainly thinking of you and folks there in the path of this storm. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome, and thank you too.